Main privilege which 𝐾𝐎𝐀 gives to the design organization to decide is it change minor, which do not significantly affect aircraft safety and so on, major, which significantly affects. So it's privilege which 𝐾𝐻EA grants to the design organizations.
If 𝐾𝐻EA will see that this design organization is not able to classify if this is a big change or minor change, they simply will not trust you, and during the audits you can get the findings and can be limited with your work scope.
And it's quite difficult to explain for the customers. They say, we were flying for 5-10 years and everything was okay. Why we need to change it? But the problem that you are transferring your aircraft from one legal field, national authority, to another legal field is 𝐾𝐻EA, which has much stronger safety requirements.
If we wrongly identify how long it will cost, how long it will take to finish the project, it can be frustration at the end of the project, no matter what is the result.
All right, so Pavel, Donaldas, thank you so much for joining us here today. I can finally say that because the previous episodes that we've had it with your base maintenance department, we've had it at your logistics department. So I was invited there, although I was hosting them in the podcast. But finally, you're here close to our studio, and we can talk about that. So what we're going to be talking about today, POA and DOA, obviously, which is design organization approval and production organization approval. But before we dive into all of that, the one question that we've been asking at the start of all these episodes is, what got you into aviation, right? What was the aviation bug, something that inspired you to get into the industry? Did you know that you wanted to be in aviation from the beginning, or is it something that you discovered along the way and then you just fell in love with it? So maybe, Donaldas, let's start with you.
All right. Thank you, Michael, first of all, for inviting me into your very nice house. Initially, when I was a teenager, I had some aircraft modeling, but usually I was reading about the military aviation. That was my passion. Then afterwards, I went to work close to aviation, but not in aviation directly. And I was always thinking about how to get to this more specific area and field where the knowledge and experience and know-how is best valued. So aviation is fully about that. And when I joined aviation, it naturally came. And now I'm really happy because here there's a community, there's valued know-how, experience, and it works in this field of the market pretty much. So we're really happy about that.
Mm-hmm. And Pavel, from your side, similar experience or different?
A little bit different. First of all, my father was working in aviation, so I saw my father, so I decided to go behind his steps, and I joined the local university. I ended a local university. I entered in aviation as a workplace in 2005, so almost 20 years already experience in aviation. And when you enter aviation, it's almost no chances that you will leave it.
That's quite fantastic. And hearing both your stories and how, again, it started from an early age, right? And there was, whether it was family influence or just having that exposure to aviation, it brings up something that's quite interesting in the sense that if I look into my own history with aviation, going into aviation engineering and aerospace, the thing that attracted me most, or that attracts a lot more young people, is the design aspect of it, right? Being able to model your aircraft or build them, whether you're using Legos or tailored materials, just having that excitement to be able to build something, or to build something that flies, at 36,000 feet. That's quite impressive. Now, obviously you have those dreams as a young person, and then you travel the journey and you get into your career, right, in design, in production. Could you just give an introduction of what you do today on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, yearly? How would you paint that picture, Donaldas?
All right, so we call it Aviation Design and Production Department, what we do together. So it means that the design, the DA Part 21J and PA Part 21G, they're under one department, both units. So I'm as head of department have to manage communication between units, the output, the plans, the commercial part, the legal part. Well, everything what's going around for the team to be able to do their work to deliver to the customer. So as well, working on commercial programs and trying to attract more customers, find a strategy which will work next year, because if it works this year, it's already too late to develop it. So, and it's really a changing market, ever-changing market. There's a lot of new things every year. What is related to design, because it's DA who can create something new. It has some maneuver, space for maneuver within the regulations. So it's about to find what will be the trend in the future. So that's really interesting. That drives me a lot.
Same for you as well, Pavel? As I know you're more on the design side of things. Is that the same?
A little bit different. First of all, I have a few roles in our department. My main role is like a head of airworthiness in design office. So from the title, you understand it's more related to the airworthiness, so it's more related to the safety. It's more related to the checking of the documents, checking regulations, and so on. On other hand, I am working additionally as a quality manager in production organization. As a quality, you are checking the products, you're making audits, you're opening, closing findings, and so on. So my work is more related to technical part of this one, to the papers, documents, regulations, less to the management.
Now, quite fascinating, and I want to stick on this topic here, Pavel, because now obviously when you look at MRO, right, part of the main sectors that are, let's say, they receive the most media attention are, let's say, Part 145, right? Base and line maintenance as well. We're talking today about Part 21J and Part 21G, DOA and POA. Now, we've described them as the design organization approved, as well as the production organization approved. Let's go deeper. What are they in terms of as their own entities, right? How would you describe them? And then obviously we'll try to look at how they work together. So Pavel, still with you, how would you describe these two entities?
Design office is a department which creates something new, absolutely from the zero, as scratch. So the making design of the new things. It can be very small, it can like small placards in the aircraft, or it can be quite big one. So the biggest is the whole aircraft. It should be designed. After that, when design office finishes all his paperwork, signs all paperwork, they give to the production organization, and production organization, based on this on documents, produce part itself. So customer gets one document which says how to install this one part on the aircraft, and gets the produced part. So it's like cooperation between design and production for the customer, for the operator, to get a final product.
Something that you mentioned there, which I want to stick on a little bit, is that you design something new, right? Now, as you know, from a very public understanding or general understanding, you would have the perception of maybe designing within the specifications of the manufacturer of a part. But as I'm getting here, you have the approval to design something new, something that may be outside those specifications. Is that right?
Yeah, it's very interesting question, because there is a common regulations which are released by EASA, so it's European Union Aviation Safety Agency, and you should follow this one rules. All other standards from the Boeing or Airbus, they can help you, because okay, Boeing and Airbus is doing like this one way, I can make it similar, but you are not obliged to follow it. You can make your own rule. So there is a so-called hard law which we should follow, and there is other rules which is not mandatory. It's up to you how you will use them.
And Donaldas, what would you add to that in terms of, again, DOA, POA, how they are as different entities? What would you add to that?
Well, also have to highlight one important thing, that the DOA itself as a Part 21J, it is controlled directly by EASA. EASA is supervising it because they consider it is the changing of the aircraft design is too important to be left unchecked and to be under control of National Aviation Authority. So, for example, heavy maintenance, line maintenance, technical trainings, and part-time services, they are supervised by National Aviation Authority, while the design is supervised directly by EASA. They are controlling the design changes, and we are reporting them. They are auditing us, and any mistake can cost us a certificate. So it's very important to be at the high standards, to keep the quality, not to sacrifice it. Safety is first. Well, production is controlled by National Aviation Authority, which is supervised by EASA, but EASA delegates the right to do that. So production anyway does what design tells to do. So
they work hand in hand.
And it's very important for us to have everything together. Before we had production there, design there, and management in different locations. So we decided to unite everything under one roof, and that's what usually works well for all the design companies and production, to stay under one roof and to have production team and design team and management working hand in hand.
On that topic, and especially maybe looking at the modification ecosystem, but more what I'd like to ask, which is a slight tangent here, is more aircraft certification. You mentioned something very important about safety, right? Safety is the pillar of our industry, the cornerstone of our industry, and whatever happens from pilot operations to normal staffing operations to manufacturers supplying whatever operations within the industry, safety is always the cornerstone. Safety is always a common denominator there. Looking at aircraft certification, what roles do DOA and POA play in aircraft certification, if any?
I would say the main role in the aircraft certification is done by the design organization, because all aviation departments can be like separated in two big groups. One, initial airworthiness, and another one, continuous airworthiness. Maybe you already had the interview with the 𝐃𝐎𝐀 department, which is a continuous airworthiness. As the same is 145 MRO, they continuous airworthiness. So they already have an aircraft and they're keeping it safe. And designer organization and production organization are responsible. So initially, from the production, from the start point, aircraft will be safe. But we're now speaking about the aircraft, but we are doing a small one modification. So any small part is the same important as the whole aircraft, because when you have a chain of the safety of the different products, the chain is strong as the weakest chain of it.
Yeah,
the wrong part
weakest link.
Weakest link of this one. So even small parts are important. That is why design is making like a biggest role in the initial safety of the aircraft. Of course, design also helping when aircraft is flying for post initial one certification. Design office is helping to support their product.
On that point, especially in how, again, you've just painted this picture of different links in the chain and how they complement each other. And Donaldas, I want to come to you, because you spoke about how the design team, well, basically the production team, does what the design team tells them to do. This is an oversimplification, of course.
Yeah.
But I want to let's talk about the different examples of what that looks like, right? Obviously, you've established the fact that the modifications that are made are obviously, yes, they do follow certain rules and procedures, but some of them may be outside the manuals, right? And the production teams also have to follow certain procedures. Yes, what they have to design is what's been designed is out of those manuals, but they have to produce it still within the same with the same, let's say, safety metrics, same especially safety, keeping that in mind. So describe some of those examples of what that looks like in terms of how design and production work together.
Okay, so let's say it's quite a simple example. placards change on the aircraft. Okay, so it looks like a small thing that can be easily changed by, you can print it in the town and just change the placards. However, there is a certain material suppliers that you can work with and who are approved to be installed on the aircraft. Even though design has to make the flammability test of these materials and to be sure that these particular materials, that roll of the placard film that is going on the aircraft meets the flammability requirements. It doesn't flame too fast and so on. So looks like production can manufacture whatever they want, but it is supervised by design team, and they make sure that materials used on the aircraft, they pass all the required tests to be there installed on the aircraft. Simple materials that looks like, you cannot different by an eye, by just a usual observer. What is the difference? It is actually it costs much more than the materials used in the town or in other industry, like in the car industry. So for example, it should not be too sticky, otherwise when you remove it, you will damage the interior surface, and the repair of interiors is very expensive in the aircraft. And it has to be not too flammable, otherwise there are a lot of items in the aircraft. If all of them will not be will not pass the tests, will not be approved by design, you can have a big fireplace in the aircraft, not self-extinguishing, and that could cost lives of people, which is very important.
On that point, and I want to take us back slightly, because yes, now we've given an example, right, without actually designating or defining when POA and DOA services are required. So, just paint that picture of where, or rather, when would you see DOA and POA services are required? Maybe Pavel, I want to come to you for this one.
If in easy words, it's quite simple. If maintenance organization cannot do something, it is not written in the AMM, Aircraft Maintenance Manual, it's not listed in the IPC or ISRM, so it's not listed in the approved documents. They need a design organization help, so design organization can approve any other instructions. Of course, if they meeting safety requirements, airworthiness requirements, and so on. But if it goes outside of the standard Boeing Airbus documentation, you need design organization help. And if to reach this one, you need to produce something. Additionally, you need production.
So, on that, do you want to add something there?
Yeah, like that. So basically, what is not on the manuals, if you want to change something by various reasons. For example, aircraft is flying 20 years. The manufacturer who was manufacturing the plastic parts for the seats, is not manufacturing that part anymore, like 10 years ago, finished that production. If they don't give an exchange part listed in the manual somewhere else, so you need a DA to do that change and to write everything on the documentation. It's simply because there are no parts available in the market.
On this point, because I'm picking up, a current undertone where, and maybe you can explain it to me, are you communicating directly with the airlines, with the MROs, and with certain clients who may rely on DOA and POA? But I'm also picking up a hint that you are operating, or rather communicating more with the regulatory bodies, with the civil aviation authorities, in terms of you staying compliant to the designs that you make and the modifications that are made. Is that the case?
In all sides. So in one side, what is related to the safety and airworthiness, we are communicating with EASA or local aviation authorities. When we are selling our products, we are communicating directly with the customer. When we need some feedback about our work, we are communicating with usually MRO or operator. If we need to make post-modification inspection, for example, we made some design change and we want to check it, we are communicating with operator and MRO. So communication is like in all sides going on.
So the business cases, the requests can come to us from aircraft owner or operator, because they want to make the aircraft, customize the aircraft for their needs. However, also EASA can affect it. For example, new mandatory requirement to install, like it was the navigational system upgrade. So all the airlines has to meet that mandatory requirement up until deadline. So then it comes that that mandatory requirement, you prepare for that, and you can offer the product to the market. And also it can go from aircraft manufacturer. For example, they found some fault on the aircraft. They release the idea that you need to upgrade the aircraft. You need to change this, all the same aircraft types. So then airlines goes to the DAs, or DAs goes to the airlines with solution.
Mm-hmm. On that point, and a separate question here, where you mentioned how a client can come to the organizations and request a change, and now on the communication aspect, some clients may request changes which can be made, and then some clients may request changes which fall outside the limits of the main manuals, and they may fall outside, let's say, the safety limits of modifications which are outside the manuals. How do you approach that? Or are there ever any chance in any situations where a client requests a change and it's a change that can't be made because it may affect the aircraft itself? Any situations that come about that way?
Of course. So a customer is looking for their needs, and that's natural thing. I want to upgrade this, I want to upgrade that, and it's about communication with DA. Usually airline has several DA suppliers, not tens, not hundreds, but like 3, 4. Some are good at avionics, some are good at other things. So engineers, customer engineers, airline engineers, they go to the DA, they trust, and they consult. What do you think about this idea? We are thinking about that. Do you think this is possible to materialize, to do that on our aircraft? So we are having discussions. It's not like requests without any background.
Usually any dialogue, yes.
Yeah, there's a dialogue between the airline and the organization, and altogether thinking how it's possible to do that. Sometimes, yes, it's not possible. And as soon as we identify that, it is better, because then we don't spend time evaluating.
Or you notify the client that, okay, this change is not feasible, or it's not within the standard limits.
Yeah, correct.
And in any addition from on that point from your side?
Just simple one. Operator has a lot of requirements. Operator is responsible for a lot of things, and for sure he cannot know some of the requirements which are very specific, especially which is related to the design, because they're not making design, they're operating the aircraft. And we already speak a few times about simple interior placard here, but it's important colors of the placard, so it will be visible, or it should be a pictogram or should be in text written. It's quite important, and there is the requirements for this one, and for sure operator doesn't know them. That is why operators go to the DA. The DA says, okay, it's possible to do or not possible, and if not possible, provides different options. We can do it in this one way, and explaining why it should be done.
Still on this point, and I find this quite interesting. So a client comes in with a certain design request, or a design request comes in, and obviously you engage in dialogue with the client in terms of, all right, is this feasible? Is this not feasible? What are some of the things that you consider in terms of the design itself and its production, on how that may affect the aircraft? Like, does it affect the aircraft's structure, flight efficiency, fuel efficiency as well? What are some of the things that you consider? I know that paint also plays a role in terms of an aircraft's fuel efficiency and flight efficiency. So what are some of the things that are considered by the organizations when designs and productions have to be done?
Yeah, actually, very simple question, but answer is extremely difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, because we are entering the area with very specific requirements. So if in few words, very simple, there is two types of the modifications: a minor modification and major modification. So small one and big one. And if what you are changing on the aircraft do not significantly affect aircraft safety, operation, environment, fuel consumption, and so on, and structural strength of the aircraft, it is a minor change. And typical minor change can be done in from 2 days to 3 weeks approximately. And major change, some of the major change done 1-2 years long lead time, so for understanding of the difference. So yeah, and it is a main privilege which EASA give to the design organization to decide, is it change minor which do not significantly affect aircraft safety and so on, or it is a major which significantly affects. So it's privilege which EASA grants to the design organizations to decide which way this modification will go. Is it minor or major one?
And Donaldas, on your point,
And would like to add then the proper classification, if it's minor or major, gives you a credit to EASA. If EASA will see that this design organization is not able to classify if this is a big change or minor change, they simply will not trust you, and during the audits you can get the findings and can be limited with your work scope. So it's very important for DA know its strength. We are good at interior cabins, for example, or we are good in avionics, and to take the work which you cannot classify can be even worse, neither just not to take that work, but better talk with partners, involve another DA organization. And overall in DA business, there's a lot of cooperation between design organizations, between production organizations. One company is focusing on metalworks, another one on composites. Then DA organizations also have own strengths. So cooperation is very important here as well.
What I'm getting from that is that it's almost a network of, organizations working together who, let's say they specialize on one particular thing, or just, taking DOA and POA as an example. The design organization, they have their approvals to make the designs, and then the production organization, they have their approvals to produce the designs that have been made. On that point of partners or working with different organizations, are there alternatives to DOA and POA? And what I'm asking is that, yes, the organizations are approved to make modifications to the aircraft, but at the same time, does the OEM have approval to make changes or modifications to its own aircraft? What's that environment like? OEMs, manufacturers as well, alternatives to the organizations.
Yes, OEM of course can make design changes on the aircraft because they're a TC holder. So for OEM, the main business actually is aircraft manufacturing, the engines, the landing gears, the big parts, the big contracts, and sometimes airline customer have requirement for one aircraft interior change, which is quite a small work overall, and they're looking for someone close by, with someone you can consult on hourly basis, someone face to face. So that's where DA actually can help. OEM, of course, covers the huge changes of the aircraft, and they are design holders. But DAs that take that niche, that is actually just close to the customer, and you are changing something for your daily operations, some improvement upgrades that they can consult with. Also, EASA can approve the changes, but EASA probably also have much more important operations at this time, and they are more focusing on supervising the DAs. They're doing by themselves the changes, and national aviation authorities also can do the changes. So 𝐃𝐏 engineers, they can prepare the engineering orders for some changes on the aircraft and apply for National Aviation Authority, and National Aviation Authority can approve those minor changes. However, if the aircraft changes the country, then you need to reapprove everything, because if there are no bilateral agreements between those two different countries, it will not work. They will have to. So that's why the simpler way is go to DA and do the EASA approved modifications, which will work everywhere in the world. or FAA approval, for example. So maybe those huge countries that aircraft lives all the cycle inside that country,
Yes.
they can maybe cope with that, just having national authority approvals. But overall, it's better to go to worldwide approved DA or design organization, then you can avoid headache in the future of aircraft operations and deliveries.
Yeah, talking on that, and I want to stay here as well because obviously, let's say an airline that flies to multiple different destinations and they have hubs in different countries, they may move aircraft, between their different hubs. And, Pavel, coming to something that you spoke about, which you do, you do a lot more with the documentation work, right? And as you highlighted, if an airline is to change its country and there's no bilateral agreement between those countries, it's a headache. What's your perception on that, or rather, what's your experience in terms of those changes and how you navigate that?
Big headache, because you see, you should remake something what was done 5-10 years ago. So it's so-called reverse engineering making. And usual problem when you are making reverse engineering, something is wrong. For example, wrong material was used. You find out that customer used screw and washer which do not pass stress requirements, and you need to redo it. And it's quite often thing, and it's quite difficult to explain for the customers. They say, we were flying for 5-10 years and everything was okay, why we need to change it? But the problem that you are transferring your aircraft from one legal field, national authority, to another legal field is 𝐲𝐫𝐠𝐚𝐧𝐬, which has much stronger safety requirements, much more rules. And that is why if customer ask us, we are never recommending to go for the national aviation approval, only in rare cases when really needed, because it's always a problem when you will transfer to the aircraft to the, it doesn't matter, to the 𝐸ASA, to the FAA or organization or something.
That stems very nicely into this next segment that I want to focus on, which is obviously it's a modern world today, right? Just to give a very quick comparison, how the industry is today is completely different from pre-2019 or before 2019, before COVID happened, right? You've got airlines performing different, airlines viewing the market and operating differently. MROs training, various organizations. Again, they've adjusted to a new market, the new norm, as they are calling it. But and especially on design and POA, where there's a very compliance heavy aspect that needs to be followed. But in some aspects, some clients may want to focus on, or maybe looking for value, right? Value creation, obviously still maintaining that compliance and that safety. How do you see that, Pavel? And I want to just stay with you on that.
It's quite usual when operator wants to have a higher safety requirement that is needed. Of course, most of the customers, especially low costers, are trying to keep the lowest level as possible, but there is some customers which ask higher requirements, and there is some reason behind this one. Because, for example, if you're transferring your aircraft from the Europe to USA, some requirements can be in USA higher. For example, there is head injury criteria, such requirement, and for some of the aircraft it's not applicable in 𝐸ASA field, but it's applicable for the FAA. So some customers say, okay, let's have a higher requirement. We will not have any trouble if we will decide to transfer our aircraft to the USA field, for example. It's one of the point. Another point that sometimes customers wants to make their life easier life for flight attendants, for the pilots, for example, to install holder for the iPad in the flight deck, as example, install some equipment for the flight attendants, maybe. So it's nothing related to the safety, but it's making the higher requirement, not requirement, compliance to the everything, because your pilots more happy, flight attendants more happy, they're making better work and so on.
What's your, even on that point, and you mentioned again, let's say some new designs where installing a holder, a holder for that. There's an aspect of forward thinking, right? So you're bringing in innovations, you're bringing in, you know, customer solutions, again, outside the norm. And as the years move by, obviously you got advancements in technology and digitalizations, advancements in manufacturing, the composites themselves. So, you know, I'm seeing it as, you as an organization, you have to be forward thinking. You have to be, you know, keep the customer in mind, but most importantly, keep that safety and compliance in mind. How do you approach that? You know, being forward thinking and innovative, but still staying within that compliance, you know, the compliance and safety field. And Donaldas, I want to come to you with that one.
Yeah, so that's the most difficult part in design business, because there's quite strict regulations from 𝐸ASA side. Yes, 𝐸ASA is probably the safest authority in the world at the moment, but it goes with the cost. You cannot innovate too much what is not tested and in other industries working for years, for example. So what is working in the automotive industry, it will go later on into aviation industry because of strict requirements. So yeah, we have to calculate actually every new thing we're trying to install on the aircraft. Every innovative thing has to be calculated very well, and the airlines should identify for themselves as well, because this is a time-consuming investment also. It's not only about the cash, it's also about the time, because if you do something new, it might take 2 years for R&D. So airline might want to be first at something. Like there are some airlines installing fast internet on the aircraft, so everybody knows about that. It highlights you.
Yes.
However, it's costly thing. It costs a lot and it requires a lot of time. So when we talk with the customer, we always try to find a cost-effective solution. Anyway, it's about that, and think if it will go on the time frames we are expecting. If we wrongly identify how long it will cost, how long it will take to finish the project, it can be frustration at the end of the project, no matter what is the result.
Yes.
And maybe other company will be ahead already. So yeah, in starting something new on the aircraft, it requires, first of all, good understanding about where we're gonna finish and how we're gonna finish that.
You know, you've just brought in this aspect about some of the challenges that you face, you know, as organizations. Obviously, we've focused a lot on the client side, but, you know, outside of that, what are some of the challenges that, you know, DOA, POA organizations face, you know, be it regulatory burdens, be it, you know, capacity, you know, company size as well. What are some of those challenges and how do you navigate them, which is most important?
Regulatory, of course, there are some challenges with that, but the good thing is that it is equal for the organization. So everybody playing in the same field.
Fair playing ground.
Yeah, fair play under 𝐸ASA. It's not like different countries giving better conditions for their own design organizations. We report directly to 𝐸ASA, so 𝐸ASA is controlling the whole environment of this. So that's a good thing about that. However, if we are talking about the business itself, you have to find your niche. You have to be good at something. If you'll try to do everything, you might not be excellent at each field. So you have to be good at something. Each DA has to find their strong sides. So also the challenge is that design organization depends a lot on aviation market overall, because if there is no aircraft deliveries, if no changes, if everybody are happy with flying with current fleet, they will not change a lot inside. If new aircraft goes into the flow really quickly, if OEMs manufacture it quickly, so you have new aircraft, everything is done in the factory, you don't need to change anything. If that stops, if there's the bottleneck with new aircraft delivery, then DA is required more, because you need to change the old aircraft, you refurbish it, make it better, make it look fresher. And also it depends on the airlines. If they have a good cash flow, they always will think how to invest into interiors, how to make more effective, how to unify, for example, the emergency equipment in the aircraft. So you don't have to sign agreements with different suppliers. You don't have to train your flight crew for different equipment operations. So you can unify and have unified warehouse and ease way for your supply chain. So if cash flow is good for airline, it's good for design as well, because then we can talk about how to bring something. Then we can go to our customers and offer them to how to upgrade their machines.
Sorry, can I add just one point? From the regulation point of view, we already discussed part 21. Yes, it's design and production organization. But problem is that part 21, it's like a book of the rules. Yeah, it's like a big book of the different rules, and it's the same book for all, for Airbus, for Boeing, or for small DA or middle-sized DA. So you need to follow the same rules. And as you understand, the rules are written for the bigger organization. So for the small organization, it's quite difficult to follow the same rules as for the Boeing and Airbus. So from this one point of view, I see some issues, especially now when EASA introduced some additional requirements like SMS, safety management system, cybersecurity requirements, and I understand that it's very important for the big one organization, but still, we as a small organization, as we are following the same book of rules, we should follow the same regulation despite our size. So it's quite a big issue for a smaller and middle size of the design organization. Of course, it's only from the certification point of view, but still.
I would like to add actually that the business is a long distance run. Because if you have a strategy, if your people is growing, if you grow the competencies inside, if you test, if you do the R&D, then at the end of the day you have good team which understands what they're doing. It's not like buy and sell. It's more complicated, and head of design, head of airworthiness, there is a deficit of people like with these competencies, with such experience. So, and it's high value employees. The salaries are really good. So, working in design, which looks like a small business from a side, it actually it is quite good business. And people, if they gain experience here, they can work for whole life, and even after retirement they can be part of design business and valued by the customers, valued as a consultants, as a trainers, or else. So that's very positive thing about the design business.
You brought up quite a number of points there, and I want to dive deep into all of them. But one aspect that that I'm picking up on, especially in terms of the capacity, the infrastructure, right? In comparison to, let's say, Part 145, right? Challenges maybe in the capacity. So let's say for the DOA and POA organizations, are you operating, either in the hangars, right? Does that affect your infrastructure, your capacity to be able to, perform the tasks, let's say, if I've positioned that correctly? What are some of those comparisons in terms of challenges with Part 145? Maybe Pavel, I want to come to you with that one first.
You see, big difference with 145, we are quite more open to use subcontractors and contracted based persons. So for 145 is much more difficult, but still, when we are using subcontractor or contracted person, he is under our responsibility. So if he makes something wrong, still we will go to finding, we will have a problem. So all subcontractors and all partners are under our so-called DMS system, so design management system. So we are responsible for them. So on one hand, it's much more easier because you can give external person who is on the other side of the world, please make such drawing. And it's quite easy to delegate tasks even now after the COVID period, when we got used for the meeting through the Teams and so on, for the communication through the emails and so on. It's much more easier. 145 cannot make work remotely. So this is a big difference between 145 and our work. Of course, we're trying to keep as much as possible engineers in house, so have a main power in house, and just use contractors, subcontractors, as like if something on the top, to not to say for customer no, we cannot, just to say okay, we will make it.
Specific additional value we buy specific competencies from the contractors.
And just to add one more, all in the end productions, it is so-called K persons. It's like a head of design, head of airworthiness, quality manager, production manager, and so on. So we are trying to keep all our K person in house, because they're helping to grow the young engineers. They're sharing their experience. So it's, as Donaldas already explained, it's quite difficult to find such person, because they should be experienced and they should be accepted by EASA or local aviation authority in case of production organization. But we are trying to keep it in house, so young person can grow faster and can take experience from the more experienced guys.
On that point, because again, that's come up right now. If you take a step back and you look at the global media, when you hear about shortages within the industry, the main shortages that you hear about are the pilot shortages or maybe crew shortages as well. But on the MRO, on the engineering side, technicians, mechanics, right, there is, how would I position it? There is a shortage in its own way, as you've mentioned, not being able to find the people who have, that right approvals, those, that experience, right, approval through EASA, as you've mentioned. How do you navigate that? In terms of, yes, you're keeping people in-house, but making sure that you have enough hands in-house, right, to nurture young talent or attracting either senior or younger talent. How are you navigating that?
Well, particularly us, we work through various directions. One of the direction is to cooperate with universities. Like Technics is cooperating with Vilnius Tech, for example, other high schools. So you don't wait when student already will finish his studies and already will be grabbed by some other company. You dragged him after third grade, probably just year or two before finish. They start in young age. So when they start in young age in the big company, actually loyalty is a bit higher, of course. The commitment to the company is higher. So of course you will not keep everyone in design. Maybe someone is jumping to other department, to other company in aviation and so on, but a number of people stays in design because it's quite interesting. You are not too much strict. You can, through the years, with experience coming in,
yes,
you can find new ways how to certify different things. So that's one direction, youngsters. Then, as Pavel already mentioned, the highly experienced contractors. They also work for several days. They gain experience from various projects. They work with different heads of designs, for example, compliance verification engineers. So they can advise you, they can give a new approach and a new way how to certify and approve new modification, new parts or R&D projects. And also direction, go to the third countries and open office here, Ireland, Malta, wherever, in Thailand, any country. So you can also collect the colleagues here to create remote office and maybe have some additional manpower here with people with aviation experience, but they are happy to join big company, big corporation, because not everyone is working in companies like ours, for example.
And would you add that,
Just
Pavel? Yeah.
to add one thing, and in our department we have a very clear pyramid where we have in the bottom junior design engineers, higher senior design engineers, which we have a little less verification engineers, K persons, and finally we got to know we passed all this one cycle when even K persons came from the design engineers. So I came from the design engineer, and now I'm head of Airworthiness. Our head of design was our design engineers and became now a head of design. So we went this one pyramids the whole way from the bottom to the top. So we now have like all fields filled.
Yes, are covered.
And at quite young age, you can top the pyramids.
You can top the. Well, that's a blueprint, of course, that you can share with the young guys who probably come in and they may feel inspired to want to build to that level. And I think that's also the great thing about aviation, where you come in from one point, you do have a trajectory that you can follow, and it's not something that you come into and then you're stagnant for the rest of your career. There's a trajectory that you can follow. Maybe it's horizontal or it's vertical. It's up to the person and what they want. I want to transition, or rather come back to something that we mentioned. And it comes down to, one, the communication with obviously the regulatory bodies and the aviation authorities, but most importantly, the communication with their clients when they come and they have, certain engineering projects or design projects that they want implemented. But most importantly, them understanding the real value of the changes that are made, right? Of especially minor changes. There's some instances where minor changes can be, and you've mentioned it before, they can be more costly or less efficient than what the client actually thinks about. So Pavel, how would you describe that in terms of getting clients to understand the real value behind those changes?
Yeah, when customer gives us the project or has the engineering change request. So, and here in the final, he gets only 2, 3, 4 documents. Only one drawing, one instruction how to install this one, and that's all. But behind this one, there is a lot of documents which customer is not getting. For example, typically customer gets 3, 4 documents, but whole project is about 10 documents different, in which we are making stress calculation, checking flammability of the parts if needed. We are checking other compliances to the regulation. We have a separate document which checks all the requirements and say, okay, we met this one requirement, we met this one requirement, we met flammability test for this one part, and it's what customer doesn't see. And so part which customer sees, I would say it's maybe 25% of the whole work done. That is why customer says we want to install only one placard. Why it's so expensive? Because you need to make all this one test. You should prepare all this one documents, give to the production, control the production, and so on. And that is what behind the scene, because nobody doesn't know it actually. And this one document is not shared with the customer because it's like a intellectual property, unless there is a agreement with the customer.
And maybe Donaldas, expanding on that, helping the customer, understand, the impact and the real value behind that cost. How do you approach that, be it on a daily basis and in your communication with the clients?
Yeah, first of all, the sales team, they have to know what they're doing. So it's really good when the sales team, they also communicate with design engineers, with production engineers. So they can have discussions, they can ask questions, and they can have an answers they will bring to the customer. So one time, our sales manager might invite the engineer to participate in the meeting. The second time, but third time, he might answer all the questions the customer has. So very important to have experienced sales engineers, to train them, to spend time talking with them, and not to make them purely sales managers just doing the cold calls. It's very important to have a good communication, good link with the customers, engineers, because for design engineering, usually the contact person is technical guy, head of engineering, interior engineer, maintenance engineer, wherever. So it's a technical guy. He will hear very quickly that you are not on the same page.
Yes.
And that you don't know similar, quite a simple things. So he'll question your competencies. So sales manager has to be prepared for that. They spend a lot of time communicating with and trying to find solution of head of design, head of airworthiness, having meetings together, trying to understand how everything works. Then they can provide the solution to the customer. So it's very important to have experienced managerial side and to be on the same page with the customer.
On that point of having the experience, having competencies, but when you look at an aircraft in general, and an aircraft, consists of millions of parts, right? Depending on whether it's wide body or narrow body. And you find that, well, from what I'm picking up, you get different DOA and POA organizations who specialize in, different parts, right? And then that's important, as we mentioned earlier, about having that network of DOAs that, a client can choose to work with, etc. What is the importance of that specialization? Whether it's, again, looking across commercial aircraft, lighter aircraft, general aviation, helicopters, gliders, what's the importance of the specialization?
The most biggest part maybe separation is for the helicopters and to the aircraft. And after that there is a separation, small helicopters and big one, and small aircraft and big one aircraft. So small aircraft is so-called CS-23 and large aircraft CS-25. And after that, if you are speaking now about the large aircraft, for example, CS-25, some of the DAs specialized on the avionics. Some DAs have only one product. For example, I don't know, fire extinguisher installation, halon-free fire extinguisher installation, and they have only this one product, and they sell only this one product and do nothing else. Other DAs are specialized on the repairs. There is DA which quite universal, which is trying to do everything. Some DAs specialize for the preparing solution and producing the solution. So they have a DA and PA in-house, with a PA which has a big scope of what they can produce. Some DAs even do not have a production organization, and they're specialized only on the design solution, and it's up to the operator or customer to search who will produce the product, who will make or implement on the aircraft. There is some even DAs which are specialized for the test flights, for example. It's like big field field. Of course, maybe the biggest field is related to the passenger interior cabin, and it's part of our, of course, business. And for customer, when he is searching for design organization, it's quite important to understand what actually he needs and wants, because not all DAs can help with all the requests, and the same must be. DA, when they're taking certificate, when EASA gives them the certificate with approval, they have approval, so they have a terms of approval, so what they can do. Not a lot of DA can do absolutely everything.
Actually, on that point there, again, still on the specialization, but I'm going to bring in the communication aspect of it, where yes, there are different DOAs who they can have a very wide portfolio of the operations that they can do, or there's some DOAs who focus on just one thing or just test flights. Now, when you're speaking to clients, how do you advise them or consult them in terms of how they should approach, who they approach in terms of DOA and POA organizations? Because I believe there is also a certain consultancy and advisory role that you take with clients, again, for the designs, but also how they should approach and communicate with that. So how do you approach that?
Well, customer, of course, they appreciate if someone takes all the issues,
Yes,
of course, and solve at all.
Takes all the headaches.
All the headaches, yeah. So of course we don't reject the requests. But we openly say, for example, that look, we have partners for that part, we have partners for that part, so stress calculations will be done by that partner. That partner will do the painting of the aircraft, and we are doing design, but we can manage it all together. So guys, you want us to do that, you're fine with that, so we will put everything on the same.
Tapping into that network that you were mentioning.
Yes.
Okay.
So and usually if they are operating in the market for 10 years, they have already a network of partners they can trust it. So customer feels that if they can go and solve all the headaches. Of course, it differs. Some airlines have big team, become a team. They specialize, one on navigation, another one on the systems, on interiors. They have own suppliers for these parts, so they can be maybe more effective in selecting who will do the best work. But the airline is paying salaries for those common engineers. So you spend on the good engineering team inside. Then you maybe win some cost-effective solutions you can get in the market. Sometimes you don't have that extensive engineering team. You save money on that, but you might not get the best solution in the market on interior changes. So it's very important to have a good partner in the name of DA when you are an airline or leasing company or a CMI. Someone who could solve everything in fast manner and you can trust in, because interior usually is not the first thing to care about. Firstly, you care about the contract of the whole aircraft, then you care about the engines, the cycles, then the ticketing, the operations, the line maintenance, who will do in the airports the checks. Then you start worry, what about the design, what about the engineering? So don't have that much of the time to solve the issues. Of course, if airline, as I mentioned, is stable, they plan ahead, they can have programs for 2-3 years up front, they plan it, let's say, in details, then yes, then it's fine. But usually for DA, one of the main aspects they have to be really good at is flexibility.
And Pavel, yeah.
Just adding, it's quite typical for DAs to use partners and subcontractors. And even Boeing, Airbus uses quite a lot of partners and subcontractors. And it's very typical for DAs to make a small part of the big project, because somebody is remaking the whole aircraft from the passenger to cargo, for example. But they do not have experience to make a livery for the aircraft, external paint scheme or placards installation. And they're asking other DES which are more specialized in this. And it's quite typical. It's absolutely normal in design world.
Now, on that aspect, because again, you're bringing in a number of aspects. One, the workflow, right, in terms of how a certain project, the approach, to completing a certain project, either multiple DOAs or one DOA with the capacity to, fulfill the whole project, as well as, again, to on the topic that we mentioned earlier, which is being forward-thinking, looking into the future. Some clients want to book their slots, as they would call an MRO, in advance, 12 months, 24, 36 months in advance. Now, something I want to bring up, which is quite a hot topic in the industry right now, there's a lot of digitalization and there's a lot of AI coming into the mix in terms of how that's influencing a lot of different workflows, across multiple industries. But something that we must obviously have to mention here is that aviation has always been conservative rightfully, because safety and compliance are the cornerstone of the industry. But how are you seeing products like AI and their influence into your operations and some of your workflows? Is it happening directly? Is it a slow transition? What are you seeing, Mark?
If we're talking about the interiors, believe so, and saw some really good ads about that. That passenger experience might be affected by AI. What your content you are using during the flights, what advertisements can be then shown to you, what people are eating, what they're doing, then intercommunication of a passenger experience in the cabin, and then in the airport. When you arrive to the airport, you see advertisements, you see what you are interested in. All these can be connected actually. So passenger experience for sure will be affected by AI solutions.
And does that affect your operations and how you might approach some of the processes and procedures that you follow?
At least how I see, I usually separate our work in two different parts. One is a technical, which is related to the technical documents, and another one is like a management, communication with the customer, agreements, payments, management of the whole project, order parts, and so on. So I would say that AI comes in this one part of the management of the project, but not in the technical field of the design work, at least at the moment. AI can help to manage, all the communication, manage buying, selling parts, not to forget do something, and so on. But in the technical field, as you already mentioned, aviation is very conservative field. I'm more than sure that the big design organization already stepping in this one field, but it just first steps, at least at my point of view.
Now, obviously, we've talked about a range of topics today, right? In terms of the operations of a DOA and POA, how you communicate with clients, what your operations are. Again, what's the scope of work there? What's the impact that you have on, let's say, modifications that need to be done, repairs that need to be done, how you cooperate, especially with regulatory bodies, as you mentioned, EASA or other regulatory bodies. Looking forward into the future, again, still staying on this, forward-thinking part, how do you see the business developing going into the future? And most importantly, what will you advise clients to look for when they're seeking, different DOA and POA organizations to work with?
For the customers, it's probably most interesting how the big players of our industry, the airlines, the ACMIs, how they will find common language with EASA, for example, because it's always about the business and the safety. So it should be a balance. The airlines, they also have a voice, and they can ask for something, maybe have a flexibility in some fields that are not that much sensitive for safety. EASA probably have discussions with airlines before implementing something, before giving rules and mandatory requirements. So it's about communication between the big players and the EASA. There is some other examples in the world, some countries doing that. So this how it will evolve, because currently it doesn't look like it's a lot of cooperation here. Could be more probably. And then as well for the design organizations or this related with the airlines, hopefully it will be good years in the near future for aviation. So airlines will have enough funds to look at the interiors. But what is really important is that give more customization to the cabins, give more special touch in it, because now aircraft looks very, very similar. If you go, it's quite standardized. It's logical from effectivity, from cost-effective side, but there are some parts you can change without having a lot of maintenance cost afterwards. For example, sidewalls, they're rarely breaking and could be customized. Aircraft liveries, they can be really have decals on side with some special programs, and everybody see that, and it's more interesting than for people, for media, for everyone. So there are some customizations you can go on and not have too much cost actually. So for us, we expect that we'll have a more special touch. They will be looking to look different than the other airline, to have something related with them.
And Pavel, from your side?
From my side, I would like say advice for the operators, when new recommendations are released by local aviation authority or by EASA, just to note that usually such recommendation in some time will be become a mandatory, not a recommendation but mandatory. And when it's becoming mandatory, it's becoming a headache. You don't have much time, you don't have, and price is quite big one for that moment. So just to look quite long forward. And on other hand, for the operators, not to stick, not to stuck for the one moment, saying, I don't need it at the moment. I'm not using it. It's not interesting for me, and that's all. Because in 5-10 years, we will transfer aircraft to the other operator, which can be interested in it, and it can be benefit for the new operator, which would say, "Oh, nice! It's nice that you done this one." And third thing, there is sometimes very small things which can make life of your crew, flight attendants, pilots, even passengers a little more easier or more nice, which do not cost a lot of money but can bring a better mood. In aviation, we are quite used to fly with a low cost operators, which everything's standardized, and then the standard operator is quite logical, but there is sometimes quite cheap solution to make everything look nicer and to make crew life easier.
Fantastic answer from both of you. To close our discussion and conversation today, what are you both looking forward to in your own personal careers about how the careers will develop and what comes next? What are you looking forward to, Donaldas?
Well, hopefully our department will grow really fast, because we grew twice in recent years, and hopefully we will expand our capabilities, increase our competencies, and team will grow, and we'll do more and more interesting things, because it's still a lot to exploit. So I'm really satisfied about the situation that we still have a lot to do. We are not feeling the ceiling over our heads, so we can do a lot, and there you just select what is the next trend. So that's really interesting game. I would say it's not a career, it's a game.
Yeah, it's a long-term game, as you mentioned. It's a long-term marathon, exactly. And Pavel, from your side?
Very similar actually to the Donaldas. I'm currently in the position in which I wanted to be, and now I want to be on the same position, but bigger organization with a bigger scope, with bigger capabilities. That's my idea for the future.
Well, Pavel, Donaldas, it's been a pleasure to speak to you both, and of course, looking forward to growth for both you and your careers and the department, going forward in the future.